Hello everyone, today I, Tathagat Kumar, am going to give a short presentation on the topic ROG models in Flutter using LangChain. So before we get into it, for those who know about NLP, that is Natural Language Processing, you might know how fluent the models like GPT are when it comes to creating content, and that too human-like and precise content. Well, even though it does that, still in most chat models, the problem is mostly about the accuracy and relevance to the content. Earlier, when we had traditional AI models, we used to get that content from the pre-trained models. But with RAG, all of that changed. That is how we get such accurate and precise content. And how does it do that? We'll look forward to it in our next slides. So, beginning with what is RAG, it's simply an integration of two techniques that are precisely retrieval and generation. So, retrieval is the part that basically gets the information for the input that has been given by the user, while the generation generates the output the context of the retrieval part which supplies it with the information. So, in simple words, if I had to say, then let us say retrieval can be explained by let us say you have a question, right? And you give it to the AI model and it doesn't have any information beforehand to answer it. Most traditional AI models would struggle to answer that properly as they are mostly working on pre-trained AI models, while RAG researches relevant information from external sources so that it can keep up with up-to-date information, then combines it with input, and finally goes on to the generation phase to give us an output that we desire. That would be a brief gist of how what RAG is. But now, how it works really? Well, for that, let's just say that in the retrieval phase, when the input is given, the RAG model tends to search the information from external sources and gathers all the relevant detail it can get. From there, it splits the information, embeds it, and then stores it in a vector database. Now, all these terms might sound a bit tricky at first, but I will be discussing them later in the slides. So, for now, let us say that we have retrieved our information. We then extract the most relevant information that is closest to the question that has been asked by the user. Now that we have retrieved that, we move on to the generation phase where we concatenate it with the input that was originally asked by the user. And then, together with that, we give it as a prompt to a GPT model, and that LM model then further gives us an output. And that is, in a nutshell, how RAG models work. Now, going deep into how they really work, as I told you before, for retrieval process, how it loads, splits, embeds, and then stores it in a vector database. I will be taking it now. So, firstly, now we load our most relevant information that we get from the external sources. Now that we have all the information that we need, we split it down into several parts. Let us say we split it down in chunks of data actually, so that we can generate precise content. Let us say if we have lots of information, you cannot just really summarize it in a few words. So for that purpose, we split it into chunks of data. And after that comes the most important part, which is embedding. Now, what embedding does is really it takes an information, be it text or number or whatever we have, and stores it in the form of vectors. Now, why does it do that? I will explain it with the help of an example. Let us say we have a simple array where the information is stored according to the index in the arrays. Let us say index 0, we will have 0, and so on. So here, just like how the data in the array is matching with the index, same process happens when we are storing vectors in form of embeddings in the vector database. Now, what is the use of it? Well, whenever the user asks us with an input, uh, then it helps us to actually compare what is the closest to the answer that the user wants. And that is where the embedding part really works with by giving us the most relevant from our most relevant information. And that is how the retrieval block works. After that, now that we come into the generation phase, we see that once the input has been given by the user in the form of question, it goes into the retrieval block, and from there we further to the give it as a prompt, but like I told you before, concatenated with the input with the LLM, so that we can get the most precise output that the user can expect, and that is a full explained functioning of the RAG. Now that we have completed with the RAG, let us talk about LangChain. Now, LangChain in a nutshell is basically a open source framework that helps with almost any LLM that you want to use. Let us say you want to use Grok or OpenAI or maybe something else, maybe make something of your own, then LangChain provides you with the proper tools to do that. Other than that, it provides you with features to make not only just RAG but some extra features such as prompt engineering or even your own chatbot and etc. etc. Furthermore, LangChain has recently introduced LangSmith and LangGraph, which you can discover on their website, which we will be discovering as well later in our presentation. So that summarizes our LangChain part. Now, let us look at the challenges that comes when you are using an RAG model. While RAG might give you quite precise content, it has a limit to how quick it can give an answer, as both the retrieval and the generation take quite the time. The issue comes with the latency. Let us say if you are giving multiple inputs to the RAG at one time, then it may cause potential delays. And for that reason, you might see that in models such as GPT, you may ask only one question at a time. If you could ask multiple, then it would actually cause a lot of trouble for them. Other than that, the API management, that is to handle the API calls and timeouts, as a lot of heavy work occurs when it comes to retrieving and the generation. So that is one of the cases. Other than that, cost is a major factor, which we will be discussing when you will be using a chat model in LangChain, as well as a few models happen to cost you for the service they provide you. While not all are costing you, you may use free services as well according to your needs. Other than that, the data privacy, which mainly comes when you are using an API key. For that, you need to just hide your API key in the form of a .env file or any other method that you can maybe use get pass library, which basically makes you input your API key in the form of a password or any other that you can find. Now, after this, let us just get into the demonstration. As you can see the steps, I will be performing them now. So let's just get into it. So before we get into how the demonstration of how to use LangChain in Flutter, let's just briefly look into the documentation of LangChain. So as you can see right here, we have what all LangChain can be used for and how all can use it in different ways, along with its newly released LangGraph and LangSmith, which you can look it up yourself and use. But keep in mind, those are commercial, but LangChain is free. So feel free to use it without any hesitation. And other than that, down below we can see that we have the ease of choice, but we are trying to use a chat model. That means it is not any specific to a chat model. You can just use it with any. For example, we have such options of with Grok or OpenAI, even Anthropic, or even something like Google Vertex, and so on. They might have a bit of a changes in their codes, but most of them are very similar. Also, a few of them might um, might cost you some price, while many of them are free. So keep in mind which one you want to use according to the service that you need. Now, moving ahead, we have the architecture part where we need to know the four or rather five main libraries and what their uses are. And why do we need to know that? Basically, when you will try to make a large scale LangChain project, you will realize that if I need some certain tool, let us say a third party integration with something like Hugging Face, then you will need a library like LangChain Community, which is out of the scope of the basic LangChain libraries and so on. Or let us say you want to use Mr. Layer. So for that you will use a library like LangChain hash Mr. Layer. So for that you need basic knowledge of how to use the architecture of LangChain. So here we have LangChain core, which gives you basically all that the basic LangChain has to offer to you. And that we have basic LangChain or just LangChain, LangChain hash OpenAI. We have talked about whatever chat model you wish to use. Just put in like LangChain hash whatever model you want to use. And after that, we have LangChain community and LangGraph. You can just ignore unless you wish to switch into the commercial part. And other than that, now we arrived at tutorials, and you can check out their tutorials. They have some amazing tutorials, so if you need some inspiration, please check them out. And for the demonstration, I will give you a glimpse at the tutorial for RAG. We'll look at this one. So here, even though we have it right here, all about the setup and installation part. Let me just explain the setup part. I will be explaining with the code part. So if you want to set up LangChain, you can either do it in Jupyter Notebook or a Python, because later on we will setting up our own server. So for that you can use both, but I prefer Python to implement it in the server. Other than that, we have codes for API keys, how to have them in your server or project, whatever you want to term it. And other than that, we have the underlying chat model and you can choose different models while using different embedding models. You have these of choice. Like I told you before, that's the best thing about LangChain. Other than that, the vector store you can either use in memory, but personally, the most Famous ones are Roma and Face. They don't do much except just storing the retrieve part and storing it in the form of vectors, which I talked about before as well. So moving on, let us just switch into the code part. Alright, so here I've just made a simple application on RAG, which basically takes input from the user, processes it, and summarizes it with an output. So now in that we have dependencies that I have already installed right here, as you can see, so that we can save time on it. So moving ahead, we can firstly just use, or rather activate our API key by just running the code snippet. Here we have it. And now we will move on ahead to the main code that we will be working with. So right here, as you can see beneath all the libraries that I have loaded, here we have under the comment section, we have a web-based loader that which basically has loaded a whole web page as an input to summarize. Well, I wanted to give the freedom of giving whatever information that you want, that the user wants to give, it's summarized. So for this example, I've given it in the form of a test.txt file, which is right here, and it contains some information from Wikipedia about Taj Mahal. So that is that. After that, I have loaded it with the help of a loader, and just after that, in between, we have done quite a lot of work. But if you look at right here, you will realize that after loading, the main thing that we have done is basically splitting it in the form of chunks. And the chunk size and overlap, you can define it yourself, but you will get results funny. So feel free to experiment and tinker around with it. And in that, we have split it with the help of split underscore documents command. And then finally, we have used our embeddings model, which is here Hugging Face embeddings, which is specifically the model name that we have used right here is a sentence transformer, or rather BERT, that we have used, which after that we have stored it in the Chroma vector database. Now that we have successfully stored it in our vector database, now we can just give it a command, which we do right here. And in between, we have just basically made our RAG chain to use at ease by the user, and I have by default preset it to summarize so that whatever input we give, it can be summarized by default. And now when we just simply run it, let's just see, it should be giving an output pretty soon. All right, so as you can see down below, it says that how the text describes an optical chamber with sides. So you get the idea that it has basically summarized it quite perfectly. And that is the main purpose of RG model. Also, I have here below I have just done for the cleanup so that let us say you want to make any changes to the text.txt, it basically you can do it right here and then use it again. But if you do not use this part, it will just overlap it with your previous changes, that previous vector database that you made for previous prompt, and That causes a lot of hassle. So now let us just implement it in Flutter. Alright, now so here as you can see we have opened Android Studio, and here we are inside a Flutter app that we will be using to access our RG module. So what I've done here really is I've made a simple application that is integrated with our LangChain RG module via a server. So what it will really do is that our application on the front side will take the input, give it to our LangChain RG model, which will be running in the web server, take output from it and display it accordingly. Now, the web server part is handled by the package which is known as the HTTP package. I hope you know how to use it, but I will just show you how I have used it right here by using the await HTTP post. That now, other than that, you will understand it a bit better by demonstration or example. So let me just get into my Android device. Just a sec. Let me just run it now. Oh wait, I have to run the server first. So I will do that from here. I've made it already. So I will just simply start it. I will start web app, and now we will run it. Alright, so now that our application has finally booted up, let's just quickly test it out. Let me just so here you can typically write anything, but I will just copy and paste something I have from a clipboard about an article on baby. So let me just click on summarize. Let's just see what does it do. Should take a while, but it should give us like a response. Alright, so as you can see right here, the child welfare committee will counsel about well-being of a baby involved in an accident. And as you can see, it's giving us a proper response, and that is how we see the how you can implement RAG in Flutter and how useful it is. So, in case you have any questions, please feel free to ask by the end of this session. And thank you.